So in this video I thought I'd discuss PC setup, specifically my own. Now a lot of you guys have been asking for something like this for an extremely long time, and the reason I put it off is because I was never happy with the PC setup I actually had. So I thought I'd give a bit of a backstory of how it actually came about, me becoming a PC gamer, switching over from console, and getting to where I've actually ended up today with this PC setup I have now. So once upon a time, about 2.5 years ago, there was a guy called Westy, and he was a console gamer, and he used to game on the PS3. He used to love gaming with his friends on the console simply because that is what they had. Everybody could play together, we could all play Bad Company 2 together, and it was a good time. It then came to a point in my life where I was starting to earn money from a part-time job, and I thought, do you know what, I want a decent PC, I want to move over to PC gaming. I'd seen Battlefield Bad Company 2 on the PC, I played it at my mate's house, and I absolutely loved it. It was much harder to play at that time because I'd never been a PC gamer before, but it just looked so much better and much more fun, so I wanted to make the switch. And of course when you're only 17 you only really have a limited budget, so I went out and I bought an AMD based gaming PC. It cost me about 800 quid. It had modest specs for the amount it actually cost, but it was pretty much the minimum requirements to play Battlefield 3 on medium settings. I had an AMD FX 6100 at 3.4 GHz, which is a 6-core processor, 8GB of RAM, and a 6950 GPU. Now, at that point, I was pretty happy with my setup. I was able to game on the PC, and after a couple of months I got really comfortable with the mouse and keyboard and found PC gaming, for me at least, to be much better than console gaming. But that's where it started to turn a little bit sour for me. The PC itself, not that it was really underpowered, because it still isn't in terms of today's computing anyway, it just didn't really do what I wanted to do when I wanted it to be done. It sort of did things at its own pace. It took its sweet ass time to do things. And after about 8 months, I installed an SSD, and this is where things really started to go wrong. My computer blue screened all over the place, I was getting random crashes, programs were closing for no apparent reason, and I started to get really frustrated. Now the simple solution to a problem like this would be to run some diagnostics myself, perhaps take it away to a computer specialist who would be able to diagnose the problems for me, and hopefully get it sorted. But at that point I had a growing YouTube channel. I just hit about 1,000 subscribers and I really enjoyed making videos for you guys. I was having a great time, so I simply ignored all those issues. And I put up with all of those random crashes, all of those blue screens, all of the, I don't even know what it was, and I put up with that for the next 8 months. Until finally, about 2 weeks ago, my computer gave up the ghost. I don't even know what to put it down to. It could have been the power supply, it could have been the motherboard, but all I know is something went through it that did something, and when I turned it back on, it blue screened, turned it back on again, wouldn't recognise any of the USB ports on the motherboard, wouldn't recognise the Ethernet port, wouldn't recognise the PCIe slot on the motherboard, so it wouldn't recognise my graphics card, and I got really annoyed, and at that point I knew my computer was done for. Looking back at it now, it's not at all surprising that the computer actually died as quick as it did, simply because the amount of stress I was putting it under on the hardware that I was actually given probably didn't really correlate with being the best that it could be. I mean, if you're rendering 3 or 4 times a week on limited hardware, you're going to deplete the hardware somewhat. And in a sense, I feel really sorry for my computer. It's kind of been my buddy for the last 2.5 years. It's got there. It's been my little workhorse. It has its kinks, it has its flaws, but it got me through so much, and it gave me a hobby that I could do in my spare time that I really enjoyed, and that of course was making YouTube videos. But you have to move on, and of course I did. I did it relatively quickly. I got hold of some money and I bought my new parts. So up on the screen in front of you right now is a shot of what my current setup, my current desk sort of looks like where I make all my YouTube videos. So that is it as it currently is. I've got a 5.1 surround sound speaker system, I've got a 22-inch 1080p monitor, and that's a Zalman Z11 Plus case over on the right hand side, and that houses all my new parts for my PC that I'm now going to tell you about. Just for reference, I've put up a picture of what the inside of my case looks like. The cable management isn't great, but you'll have to forgive me. I've got a limited amount of length of cables, so I did the best I could. So going from my low-end AMD setup, I wanted to go to Intel to try the premium side of things. So I ended up buying an Intel i7 3770K, which is an Ivy Bridge quad-core processor. Now at this point you might be thinking, Westy, why didn't you go for the new 4770K Haswell i7 processor? Two simple reasons. It doesn't overclock as well as the 3770K does, and it actually runs hotter as well. Plus, when you put all of the i7s side by side, if you were to bring the first generation and put it side the 4th generation, you would see a noticeable difference, but still at the same time, you're looking at pretty much the highest end sort of normal desktop CPU that you can buy for a reasonable price from Intel. So the difference between sort of 2 generations isn't actually a massive jump. To mount that CPU onto, I went for an ASRock Extreme 4 Z77 motherboard. I was going to go for an Asus Sabertooth, but it was a little bit out of my price range, so of course this was the next best thing. To keep the CPU running nice and cool, I opted for a Corsair H60 closed system liquid cooler. You can buy it for about 65 quid off of Amazon and places like that, and I have to say, I'm really happy with the results from this thing. I've noticed no hiccups so far, a really nice running temperature, no sort of random increases in temperature either, so right now, I'm really happy that I made that purchase. I've got 16GB of Corsair Vengeance RAM that I took over from my old system. I have to recommend the RAM because it is actually extremely good. I haven't noticed a huge amount of difference, but then again I've never really changed my RAM before, so I wouldn't really know what other RAM sort of feels like in terms of performance and stuff like that. But if you want some really good RAM, Corsair's a really good company to go to. In terms of storage, I've got a 256GB OCZ Agility 4 SSD that I use for my main games and Windows to boot from. This PC boots in about, I think, 18 seconds I timed it as, so it's got a really fast boot time, and loading times for Battlefield 3 are immense. And then for my larger storage, I've got a 3TB Seagate Barracuda that I use to record all of my games to, and programs that I don't often use are on there as well. And I've got an external 1TB drive that I've got all of my YouTube videos on, all of my thumbnails, all of that is all on there, so that if my computer ever goes, I've still got all of my graphics and all of sort of the core parts that I need to make a video are all on that external drive. But last and definitely not least, we come to the graphics card. Now, I had a massive decision to make when it came to choosing this graphics card. I either went for a GTX 770 on the Nvidia side, or I went for a 7970 GHz edition on the AMD side. And with Battlefield 4 in mind, I went for that AMD 7970 GHz simply because Battlefield 4 is going to be optimized for AMD hardware, which means the graphics card is likely going to have a few more frames per second than what the GTX 770 is going to be capable of. So that is it, guys. That is my Battlefield 4 PC. This PC is going to be able to run Battlefield 4 at ultra settings at least 60 frames per second, if not higher. So I'm really excited for Battlefield 4 to come around to test it. But thanks for watching this video, guys. If you did enjoy it, don't forget likes and comments are always appreciated. But until next time, my name is Westy, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.